We had an intensive weekend in the Middle East, coming from all directions. In Syria, the Americans launched Operation Hawkeye against ISIS to retaliate for an ISIS attack last week, which resulted in 3 American fatalities. Officials say the attacks could last weeks, and we have already produced some dramatic results. Meanwhile, Israel is also pressing ISIS in the southern Syrian area, arresting operatives, breaking up cells, and confiscating large amounts of weapons, ammunition, and cash that the terrorist group intended to use against all its enemies, including Israel, but also including the Syrian regime. And meanwhile, the IDF hit Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon over the weekend, as the Lebanese National Army said that their plan to dismantle Hezbollah positions south of the Litani River is nearing completion. Will it work this time? Is the Lebanese National Army really going to stand in Hezbollah's way? We might be about to find out, because Lebanon's Prime Minister announced that the country is ready to move to the second stage of the army plan to limit Hezbollah's weapons. In the Gaza Strip, frustration is growing as President Trump's peace plan has hit a dead end and Hamas refuses to disarm. This is leading to an explosive pressure in the Gaza Strip amidst fears that Hamas will stage a disarmament show. However, the Americans are moving ahead and over the weekend announced Project Sunrise, an initiative to rehabilitate Gaza with its capital as Rafah. The plan by White House envy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner includes the Gaza Riviera project with luxury hotels and AI networks. We'll bring you all the details. And meanwhile, there is increasing concerns in the West due to unusual aerial activity by Iran and reports that the Islamic Republic is gearing up to produce as many as 3,000 ballistic missiles every year. During his meeting with President Trump in Florida later this month, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will present options for new strikes to disrupt these efforts. Is this just a threatening signal? Or could these strikes actually happen? We'll take a closer look. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto. With me today is Shoshani, and we're bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. The top story coming into the new week is Operation Hawkeye, the dramatic US strikes on ISIS in Syria to retaliate for an attack in Palmyra in Syria earlier this month, which resulted in 3 American fatalities. The United States military struck 70 ISIS targets throughout Syria overnight between Friday and Saturday, with reports indicating that the Jordanian Air Force also assisted in these strikes. And President Trump was quick to announce that Syria's interim president, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, fully supports the operation and declared anyone who attacks or threatens the United States will suffer the severe blow of their life. The American Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, added that this is not the beginning of a war, but a declaration of revenge. While the Americans and the Jordanians were hitting ISIS in Syria from the air, the IDF was rounding up ISIS operatives in arrest operations on the ground south of Damascus. Further afield, diplomats from a Western country and an Arab country have warned Iraq that Israel could be preparing to hit pro-Iranian militias in the country. Speaking of diplomacy, despite President Trump's victory declarations about the end of the war, his phase peace plan for the Gaza Strip has hit a dead end as Hamas refuses to disarm. Israel, as it has declared again and again, will not withdraw from the Yellow Line border, and the international community fears coming in to do the dirty work and dismantle Hamas of its weapons. In addition to all of this situation, Phase A has not yet been ending because the remains of the fallen hostage Ran Gaveli have not yet been returned to Israel, to his family, while Hamas is rebuilding, and it is saying that it will not lay down its weapons. Israel made clear that it will not leave while Hamas has weapons, so right now it looks like nothing will move in Gaza. Furthermore, sources in Israel are troubled by the possibility that Hamas will produce a show of handing over rifles and other small arms, and even if afterwards most of the heavy weapons will remain in its hands, Israel will be required to move to Phase B and withdraw from the Yellow Line. Over the weekend, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio noted that progress had been made in Trump's plan for Gaza, but clarified that there is still a road to go. He emphasized that the goal is clear, that Hamas will not be able to threaten Israel, and also referred to the activity of the International Stabilization Force and the rehabilitation of the Gaza Strip, saying that you cannot convince countries to invest in Gaza if they believe there will be war again. And with all of that in mind, TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us all the details about Project Sunrise as the American initiative to rehabilitate Gaza is revealed. The ambitious initiative, costing $112 billion, has already been presented to donor countries in an attempt to raise funds in the near future. However, it is conditioned on Hamas disarmament. The purpose projects include developing energy infrastructure and advanced technology over a period of at least 10 years. At the center of these plans are projects to rebuild Rafah and also Khan Yunis, Gazan cities, with high-speed trains, a smart power grid, and cultural centers. Only afterward will 70% of the Gaza Strip's coastline become the Riviera of the Middle East, with huge profits. But all of this leaves us with many questions, including the question of where the funding will come from, the biggest obstacles that will need to be overcome, and the pessimism that nothing will change. In the northern arena, there is more optimism than things are moving in a positive direction, because the Prime Minister of Lebanon's internationally recognized government, Nawaf Salam, announced over the weekend that the country is ready to move to the second stage of the National Army's plan to dismantle Hezbollah's arsenal of weapons, which will focus on the area north of the Litani River. According to him, the first stage of the plan south of the Litani River is days away from completion. I'm glad to hear that, but I'm also surprised to hear it, and I'm looking forward to some confirmation, if there is any. And in the wider region, Israel is looking with great concern at Iran's attempts to ramp up production of ballistic missiles once more. Some reports indicate that they could soon have a capability to produce as many as 3,000 ballistic missiles every year. And in his meetings with President Trump in Florida next week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will present options for striking the production facilities. Will the Americans join Israel in these strikes? We might find out soon, after a new satellite image showed cover that is being placed over the compound that was bombed in Natanz, indicating continued work not only on ballistic missiles, but Iran's renegade nuclear program. We have a lot to talk about today, but let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel on the 807 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we begin, I want to call on you to help us spread the truth. Israel is fighting on the front lines against evil, attacked by lies and fake news, and we are here to stand with Israel to push back against these anti-Israel propaganda so that truth comes to light. So to help become ambassadors of the truth, share this content with as many people as possible. And if you still are not following us, please subscribe to the YouTube channel TBN Israel so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. We'll start today's report with the recent events in Syria, where the United States military launched strikes against 70 ISIS targets overnight between Friday and Saturday in response to an attack in Palmyra last week, which resulted in 3 American fatalities, including 2 soldiers and a civilian interpreter. 3 other American soldiers were wounded in the attack. The Syrian Ministry of Interior noted that at the time, the attacker was a member of Syria's security forces who held an extremist ideology, and President Trump promised there will be a very serious response. The United States continues to deploy about 1,000 soldiers in Syria as part of the international coalition it has led for years against ISIS. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth confirmed late Friday evening that the military launched Operation Hawkeye, during which ISIS terrorists and the terrorist organization's weapons will be struck. Hegseth also pointed out that this is not the start of a new war. This is a declaration of revenge. in an apparent effort to calm concerns among supporters of the Trump administration about the American involvement in conflicts all around the world. He also declared that the United States, under the leadership of President Trump, will never hesitate and will never be deterred in defending its people. The operation, led by U.S. Central Command, began at 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Friday with the assistance of Jordanian aircrafts. CENTCOM's official X account soon posted footage from the strike stating that more than 70 targets across Syria were struck with more than 100 precision munitions. And according to the report by the AP news agency, an American official said that F-15 jet aircrafts, A-10 Thunderbolt ground attack aircrafts, and AH-64 Apache helicopters were all employed in the strikes, and noted that further attacks should be expected. In Washington, they assessed that ISIS is seeking to exploit the instability in Syria after the fall of the Assad regime in order to reorganize and renew attacks, and clarified that the United States will continue to act against the organization to prevent its strengthening. President Trump also noted that we are striking with great force ISIS strongholds in Syria with the full support of the president, Abu Muhammad al-Julani. He had some praise for al-Julani, saying he is working very hard to return Syria to greatness and threatened anyone who attacks or threatens the United States will suffer the most severe blow of their life. In his own statement, Secretary of War Hagstach claimed that many terrorists were eliminated in the strikes, while the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights claimed that at least 5 ISIS members were terminated in these strikes in Deir el-Zur province. One was defined as a cell leader responsible for drones. It is important for you to understand that in parallel to the American strike, the IDF continues to act against ISIS cells that are trying to establish themselves in southern Syria. For instance, in a nighttime operation on Saturday night, Golani Brigade forces arrested a suspect who is operated by ISIS in the southern Syrian area. The operation was completed together with the field investigation of Unit 504 of the IDF, and the suspect was transferred for interrogation inside the Israeli territory, while weapons and ammunition were also confiscated. And in recent months, the IDF has increased oversight in southern Syria in an attempt to block ISIS entrenchment. Dozens of ISIS operatives in the area have been arrested, while others didn't want to be taken alive, so they weren't. Many who were arrested have been brought back to Israel for interrogation, where they have provided information which led to more raids and more arrests. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the information about what's going on in Syria. And in a moment, we will move on to the latest news from the Gaza Strip. But first, I want to once again invite you to be part of the team by helping us spread the truth, share, and follow us. Most importantly, don't forget to press that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, I need to speak to you for just a few moments about one of our partners, because during the Hanukkah season, we talk a lot about light overcoming darkness, but for many children in Israel, the darkness isn't symbolic, it's very real. Since October 7, 2023, tens of thousands of children have lived with fear, anxiety, trauma that no child should even ever experience. Some have watched their whole world fall apart in just an instant. Some carry wounds that no one can see. And at Shiloh Israel Children's Fund, there are trained professionals that are helping these children heal. Through trauma-informed therapy, they are helping young hearts process the pain, find safety, and begin to hope once more. Not someday. Now, one therapy session can change a child's life. A month of support can restore their stability. A year of care can help a child reclaim their childhood. This is what the Light to the Darkness campaign is all about. Turning compassion into action, turning belief into healing. As we light our own candles this season, we have a chance to be a light for those who need it most. So if you want to support Israel's children with this unimaginable situation that they need to go through, www.israelchildren.org/help. Again, That's www.israelchildren.org/help and give today. Your support doesn't just make a statement, it actually makes healing possible for many children in Israel. So thank you. And now, we'll move on to TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani, who will tell us about Project Sunrise, the American initiative to rehabilitate the Gaza Strip. The initiative proposes that over a period of at least 10 years, Rafah and Khan Yunis will be rebuilt, followed by the central camps and then Gaza City with high-speed trains, a smart power grid and cultural centers. Only afterwards will 70% of the Strip's coastal line becomes the Riviera of the Middle East with huge profits at a cost of $112 billion. This plan has already been presented to donor countries in an attempt to raise funds in the near future. However, it is conditioned on Hamas's disarmament, and that is the big problem in all of this situation. 4 months have passed since the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip went into effect, and Washington is pushing to open Phase B, including another Israeli withdrawal, early reconstruction, and an international mechanism that will hold the whole thing together. In Jerusalem, it's no secret that the pressure will rise as the planned meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump at the end of the month in Florida approaches, because the president has made this plan a major priority for his presidency and tied his personal prestige to it. But in Gaza, there is no deadline, as Hamas has not returned the last fallen hostage, and there are still many tunnels, militants, and a black market that continues to function. The one now presenting itself as holding the keys in Hamas, which understands well that time is working in its favor. It offers a long ceasefire, so-called storage of the weapons, and also cooperation with the international community, but at the same time, it is retaining its military capabilities. And this is not a compromise, it is a strategy. The Americans must decide whether to accept these circumstances, even as many other countries are also interested in getting involved in what happens next in the Gaza Strip. Therefore, Hamas's disarmament is the bottleneck, and however and whoever holds access to it becomes a key player. So Mati, tell us what's going on.
Today I want to give you the full scoop on what is preventing Phase B in the Gaza Strip from truly kicking into action. Over the last couple of days, new information has surfaced, both as it relates to what the US is planning to do in the Gaza Strip, the Big Sunrise Project as it's known, and what Hamas is actively doing to prevent Phase B from kicking into action. A lot has been happening over recent days. Let's dive into all of it right now. So let's start with the first part of it, Project Sunrise. We've seen images from this project, we've heard rumors about it, and over the weekend additional images and additional explanation of what the plan actually is going to come into light. Let me give you the high-level details on this project. This is the Trump White House project to rebuild the Gaza Strip. And what does that mean? It's a project that over several years dedicates over $112 billion into building the Gaza Strip. This is money in part coming from the US, but for the most part coming from other Arab countries, other regional powers. And it's a project to rebuild construction, to rebuild infrastructure, engineering, of course, throughout the Gaza Strip, humanitarian and civil life. It's what really brings the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East. This is the plan we've been talking about for weeks, and now we get to see more details about it. Another interesting thing about this project is the fact that the project now talks about also the infrastructure of bringing commerce in and out of that region. What does that commerce look like? It looks like trains coming in and out of the region. It looks like a port in the Gaza Strip, but especially it looks like a very dramatic, very significant amount of construction and amount of dedicated manpower and infrastructure that go into this project. But why aren't we seeing any of this kick off? Why aren't we seeing any of this take place? Well, that's because of the biggest problem that we've been dealing with the Hamas terrorist organization in recent weeks. And that problem is, the word is disarmament of Hamas and what it actually means to be disarmed. Now, the terms of the ceasefire agreement that was signed multiple months ago are very, very clear. Israel withdraws, the hostages are returned, and Hamas is disarmed and the Gaza Strip is demilitarized. And after that happens, other players can come in and govern what's happening on the ground inside the Gaza Strip. But that hasn't happened yet. And we don't see it happening anytime in the foreseeable future because the part where Hamas disarms itself is not happening. In fact, Hamas is doing the exact opposite. They're working very hard, they're vigilant at least you could say, in building up their armament, building up their military capability, building up their weapon caches once again. And through intermediaries, through their friends in the region, they're trying to backpedal from the commitment to disarm. And they're starting to use terminology that is very, very vague. There'll be a freeze on their hold of the weapons. They'll deposit the weapons in the hands of other parties for the time being, possibly even depositing those weapons inside the Gaza Strip until that interim period of Phase B sort of plays its course out. But what this really is Hamas actively avoiding giving up their weapons. And I want to be clear here. This is the key point that is preventing from this agreement from moving forward. It's almost impossible to see any scenario in which a Arab or Muslim majority country would dedicate soldiers against Hamas, knowing full well that their soldiers would be facing armed Hamas terrorists inside the Gaza Strip. And this is sort of the key, the pivotal point that's been holding back, that's been delaying this entire project now for several months. So let's dive into the details of what that truly entails and what it really looks like. Once more, a key part of the entire 20-point Trump plan, or the White House plan to rebuild the Middle East, has to do with disarming and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. This isn't unique, of course, to Israel. Anywhere else in the world where you have a ceasefire agreement and then one force is removed from an area, there's a point in which they give up their weapons. You see that at the end of every regional conflict, every regional war. One force, the losing force, usually gives up their weapons, and there's some kind of amnesty program to allow that to happen. But in this case, Hamas is refusing to give up their weapons. They've been actively gathering additional weapons inside the Gaza Strip, and now they're trying to push through the Egyptians, through the Qataris, through the Turks, and they're saying, yes, we want to do the ceasefire, yes, we'll allow another force to come in, but let us keep some of our weapons, or let us keep all of our weapons, or let us just deposit them in a depot that we control for a short amount of time until things stabilize, then we get them back. But at no point are they truly moving forward with the commitment that they made, which was to give up their weapons and to demilitarize completely the entire region. And that is a problem, because no international force in their right mind, I would say, would enter into the Gaza Strip without seeing Hamas fully disarmed. Right now, the IDF forces, they've withdrawn to the yellow line inside the Gaza Strip. The yellow line is outside of the city centers, but still controlling the main corridors of transport inside the Gaza Strip, specifically the Philadelphia corridor, which borders between the Gaza Strip and Egypt-controlled Sinai, which is where a lot of the smuggling took place before and during the war until Israel took over that corridor. So until we see Israel withdrawing from that area, we have to see someone else come into their place and replace the Israeli forces on the ground. Now, we've talked about Indonesia, we've talked about Azerbaijan, we've talked about other countries, and of course, the Turkish government that's always willing to send more of their forces to this region against the will of Israel. We talked about this previously several times. But the real point here, the real problem in here is that if you get into the mind of any Muslim country leader, even if they want to be part of rebuilding, even if the incentive package by the US government is immense, it's substantial, it's dramatic, it's life-changing for them, as it might be for some of these countries, still, they're afraid of the day in which their forces will have to engage in fire against Hamas terrorists. And then it goes one of two ways. One, their soldiers respond to the Hamas terrorists and start attacking and removing Hamas terrorists from the Gaza Strip, in which case images of their Muslim soldiers fighting against Hamas start surfacing, and they suffer from a very dramatic and a very substantial political backlash, both internally and on a regional level. Most countries want to avoid that completely. Then the worst case from the perspective of Israel is that they don't do anything, that they see Hamas carrying on with their weapons in their hands, and they say, well, let's just be the ones guarding the passages of goods throughout the region. Let's be the ones at the roadblocks. Let's be the ones on the fences. Let's be the ones looking out and observing and taking notes. And that really brings us to the scenario we had in Lebanon, or the scenario we had in Syria, in which international forces were observing as terrorist organizations were actively attacking against Israel. We don't need that, and that would be completely useless for the Gaza Strip. So once again, we're at this point where we must disarm the Hamas organization. I want to look at this from a money perspective for just a second. Part of the reason Hamas is holding on is because they want to maintain control of the finances of the Gaza Strip. I mean, this is how they make money. They make money by, one, marketing and exploiting the suffering that they cause both on Israel and on the inhabitants of Gaza and Judea and Samaria, and sadly recently also outside of the borders of the Middle East. But beyond that, they also tax their own population. They don't want to be removed from that power source within the Gaza Strip, and therefore it's very unlikely that they'll willfully or willingly leave. And that brings us back to this point. We look at the incredible plan that the US presented. It's called Project Sunrise. It's a project that commits over $110 billion over several years to rebuilding the Gaza Strip. But that program specifically is not just a military program. It's a program to rebuild the infrastructure, to rebuild the civilian life, to rebuild what a country would look like, and then ultimately what a national or regional trade and technology hub could possibly look like. It's a lot of money over many years, and the reason it's so important is because this is not just the US. The US is planning to commit maybe 20% of the initial funds over the first few years, but their expectation is for the regional powers to be the ones to truly fund this. For Egypt to a certain degree, for the Qataris, for the Turkish government possibly, and hopefully down the line, Saudi Arabia to also commit funds to this project. So it would be a regional project of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. But none of that happens, as we've said many times before, without Hamas being fully disarmed and removed from the Gaza Strip. Now again, we come into this conversation where we know that there's a deadline to this entire thing. The US government is pressing Israel and everyone else in the game and saying, guys, it is money time. It's time to move forward. We want to see Phase B already taking place. And the Israeli forces on the ground look around and they say, we don't know what you're talking about. Hamas is still here. We're seeing them through our binoculars, through our fire control systems, in our vehicles. They're out there, they're waiting. They're waiting for us to show weakness for them to attack Israel again. We can't move back, we can't withdraw, and we definitely can't move into Phase B before Hamas is removed from the picture. And that's sort of the deadlock that we're in right now, between Israel's desire for safety and everyone else in this region wanting to see Phase B kick into action. And let me tell you who more than anyone else wants to see Phase B delayed endlessly. Well, that's the Hamas terrorist organization. What they're playing for here is not military gain. What they're playing for here is time. They want to see this drawn out as much as possible to the point where Trump is or out of the White House, there's a different government, or people have moved their attention to a different agenda. And then they go back to business as usual, controlling the Gaza Strip, terrorizing the people of Israel, bringing death, doom, and destruction to this region as they've done for so many years. And that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against a clock that is running out quickly, where the United States has to make this happen quickly before things change, before attentions go elsewhere, before the year is out and we lose momentum with this project. The countries of this region are looking at where they can put their loyalty in this time. Do they go with the US, or do they continue trying to play all different sides because they don't know where things are going? And let me tell you, even the Iranian Islamic regime is looking at this and waiting to see how things develop. Will Hamas be able to hold on to power, or will they be booted out, showing that the US has the resolve to really push things through in this region? Now, this is not a simple game, not a simple process, not something that's easily executed or carried out. This kind of regional stability, this kind of regional pact is very substantial, very dramatic, very historical in the making. And it all pivots around this one thing, plucking the weapons out of the hands of the Hamas terrorist organization. So here we are. We're waiting to see if the international forces that are involved in reshaping Phase B in the Gaza Strip are able to demilitarize the Gaza Strip and remove weapons from the hands of Hamas. If that happens, we can quickly see a move into Stage B of this agreement, in which an international force sets up shop in the Gaza Strip and around it and starts providing the humanitarian rebuilding and infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. But until that moment happens, no country is going to want to start spending tens of billions of dollars rebuilding a Gaza Strip that could once again fall into war under the hands of Hamas. So Hamas must be removed, and it must be removed quickly. The next days and weeks, of course, are going to be determined by the level of resolve that Israel is able to present and the Trump White House is able to project to this region. How hard they can push on the countries of this region to get Hamas out. How much Hamas believes that truly the hammer is going to come down on their head if they don't give up their weapons. This is the money-making time. As we enter into the end of the year and the beginning of next year, we're really going to see how this Middle East is going to be reshaped. And let me end with a positive image. When this happens, and I want to believe it's going to happen in the way that the Trump White House has outlined in their Project Sunrise portfolio, let's call it that. When that happens, and again, I believe this could happen in this region, it could happen to a way that will surprise all of us. Gaza can be rebuilt without Hamas. New schools, new facilities, new infrastructure, new educational system that doesn't indoctrinate a new generation to hatred towards Israel. That can all happen. That can all happen not just in our lifetime, in this very decade. And when that happens, the ripple effect of that, both geopolitically and from a security perspective, and in fighting back the forces and pushing back the forces of radical Islam in this region, they can be far-reaching beyond what we imagine. That's what's on the table right now. As we enter into the end of this holiday season, Christmas is coming up, and of course, Hanukkah is about to end. Now's the time to pray for exactly that, to see this region rebuilt and the Hamas terrorist organization removed from the Gaza Strip in something new, something good, something positive that can happen in this region. That's our prayer, that's our hope for the days and weeks ahead of us. Now back to Yair Pinto.
Thank you, Mati, for bringing your usual clarity to these vitally important issues. Now, we are switching our focus to Iran, which is increasing its production of ballistic missiles. And also new satellite imagery shows attempts to examine the destruction at a facility that was attacked in the 12-day war. According to a report on the American network NBC, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu intends to present US President Donald Trump with options for new strikes in Iran in their upcoming summit meeting in Florida. In satellite images from exactly a week ago, it appears that at the Pilot fuel enrichment plant in Natanz, the Iranians placed panels over what remained of the structure protecting against drones, nearby providing cover for the destroyed facility, although a large hole still remains in its center where the structure was breached and damaged. The Institute for Science and International Studies think tank, which closely tracks issues related to Iran's renegade nuclear program, recently published a report in which they wrote that this shows that Iran is seeking to examine the destruction away from curious eyes. They noted that the facility held several kilograms of highly enriched uranium, which is a small amount relative to Iran's total stockpile, but it's not negligible. And meanwhile, according to the source familiar with the missile program and according to former senior American officials, Iran's production of ballistic missiles could raise to about 3,000 missiles a year if there is no change. A former Israeli official said that the threat posed by ballistic missiles and their possible number in the event of an attack is Israel's most immediate concern. Israel is equally concerned about the rehabilitation of Iran's air defensive systems and the continued funding and arming of its regional proxies, believing that this is all being done in order to allow Tehran to accelerate the rehabilitation of its nuclear program and enable to better defend the enrichment sites. About 3 months ago, it was reported by the AP news agency based on satellite images that Iran began rebuilding the missile production sites that were hit in the Israeli strikes during Operation Rising Lion, but that it is still missing the critical key component for the ballistic missile array, the planetary mixers needed to produce solid fuel. Solid fuel can be loaded onto missiles and then sit there, ready to launch for a very long time. Liquid fuel is much less stable and must be stored separately and loaded onto the missiles only just before they are launched. This makes them much more difficult to operate, and it also makes them vulnerable to being hit in the hour or so it takes them to be brought out of their silos as the fuel is loaded into them, so solid-fueled missiles are preferable for all kinds of reasons. However, if Iran cannot mix the solid fuel for their missiles, they'll go with the liquid fuel option, and that appears to be exactly what's going on now. In a related story, Bahrouz Kamaldavani, the spokesman for the Atomic Energy Organization of the Islamic Republic of Iran, made remarks on December 10th, in which he called building a nuclear bomb the simplest task for the government. I suppose if your capital city is running out of water for the residents to drink and clean air for the residents to breathe, the obvious thing to do is to spend all your time and money on building nuclear weapons. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments section. And meanwhile, President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are expected to meet later this month at the president's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. According to the sources, at this meeting, Netanyahu is expected to argue to Trump that the expansion of Iran's ballistic missile program constitutes a threat that may require swift action. They say that part of Netanyahu's arguments will be that Iran's steps pose a danger not only to Israel, but also to the entire region, including American interests. Netanyahu is expected to present Trump with several options, including that the United States would join or assist in a new military action. According to one of the sources, before the strikes in June, Israel presented Trump with 4 options for military action: an independent Israeli action, limited American assistance, a joint US-Israeli action, and an American-only action. In the end, Trump decided to approve a joint operation, and that same source assessed that Netanyahu may present Trump with a similar set of options in their meeting later this month. And here at TBN Israel, we will keep reporting on all the developments regarding Iran moving forward. So keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to press that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, we're switching our focus once again to Israel's northern arena, because over the weekend, the IDF struck Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in the buildup area in southern Lebanon. And this comes after earlier today, Lebanese media reported on drone strikes in southern Lebanon. In a related story, the Lebanese Army is refusing to enter homes in the south of the country and dismantle Hezbollah weapons. According to a report by the El Akbar media portal, which is affiliated with the Hezbollah terrorist organization, sources in the army clarified that the forces will not enter any home without the owner's consent or without a judicial warrant, and that the army refuses to act as a police force for the enemy or conduct searches based on suspicion alone. The firm stance was delivered against the backdrop of discussions in the Mechanism Committee around a proposal that is attributed to France concerning a framework of a verification system for implementing United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the Second Lebanon War in 2006, but was never fully implemented. However, the French move is intended to convince the United States and Israel to grant the Lebanese Army a broader opportunity to implement a disarmament plan south of the Litani River. So far, the Army and UNIFIL forces have carried out inspections following Israeli claims of the presence of weapons or military sites, but no evidence was found supporting these claims. However, Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said in a statement to the media on Saturday that the first stage of the plan to confiscate weapons from south of the Litani River will be completed within a few days. This is not very convincing to the Israeli delegation, which is backed by the American delegation, which is exerting pressure on the Lebanese army, claiming it is not implementing the disarmament plan at the required speed and precision. After the meeting, Ambassador Shimon Karam updated the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun on the results of the meeting, and Aoun emphasized to Karam that the return of residents to their villages in southern Lebanon is the top priority and constitutes an opening for discussion of all other details. It was also agreed that the next meeting will be held on January 7, 2026. On the Israeli side, Yosef Darzanin, the deputy head of the National Security Council for Foreign Policy, participated. And here, at the TBN Israel team, we will continue to report the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. And please keep sharing, commenting, and pressing the like button. And now, we can conclude today's report with a look at what happened last Thursday in Egypt when the massive $35 billion Israeli natural gas export deal was announced. Egyptian officials were quick to emphasize that this is a commercial deal only, that does not include political aspects or political understandings between the two countries. Furthermore, Cairo emphasized that Egypt's position regarding Gaza is firm and not connected to the gas agreement with Israel. According to Egyptian officials, this is a deal far removed from any political interpretation, And the parties included in the agreement are well-known international companies operating in the energy field for years, including the American company Chevron, alongside Egyptian companies, all without any direct government intervention. The head of Egypt's State Information Service also explained that the agreement is part of a clear strategic interest for Egypt, which is strengthening its position as a regional hub for gas trade in the Eastern Mediterranean. For his part, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a statement to the media over the weekend that the gas deal with Egypt is the largest in Israel's history. And according to Netanyahu, the scope of the deal is 112 billion shekels, and out of that, 58 billion shekels will enter the state treasury. He further explained that in the first 4 years, we will receive 500 million shekels into the state treasury. The companies are investing enormous sums to develop infrastructures, such as expanding the pipeline. Within a few years, it will reach 6 billion shekels into the state treasury every single year. An Egyptian source also addressed the possibility of a meeting between El-Sisi and Netanyahu and said that such a meeting is not simple, and no gas deal will make that easier. In an interview with Ashrak El-Awsat, the source said that it depends on Israeli progress in terms of implementing the Gaza agreement and the commitment to maintaining Egypt's security, especially in light of the fact that the tension has not ended and a gas deal based on economic interests will not solve that. According to him, the possibility of a meeting is slim right now, in light of the Israeli violations and non-compliance with the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. What do you think about all of this? Should a massive natural gas agreement like this be disconnected from political and diplomatic considerations? Should Egypt be allowed to get benefits from this deal and not give anything in return? Let me know what you think in the comments section. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this subject, so keep spreading the truth. Most importantly, do not forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the IDF soldiers that are risking their lives for all of us. Pray for all the innocent lives, if it's the people of Gaza, the people of Lebanon, the people of Syria. They need better leadership. Let's pray also for the people of Iran. Let's pray that God will reign in this region, give wisdom to our leaders. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Tonight, all 8 candles burn. The menorah and the Chanukiah are both full. This is a moment of completion.
And just like God kept the light alive in the time of the Maccabees with only one little box of oil, He's keeping Israel alive today, against pressure, against enemies, against impossible odds.
Exactly. This war has shown us one thing very clearly, that Israel is still here because God is still with His people in this very land. So guys, it's night number 8. We finished Hanukkah. We get an extra blessing tonight, as we did in the first night. Let's do this, Yair.
Exactly, last night.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. There's one last one.
Yes.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen.
Okay.
Let me summarize. We thank God for providing to us, for saving us, and for bringing us all the way till this day. And guys, I think that is a perfect way to end the Hanukkah holiday. The celebration of light, the celebration of candles, the celebration that Yeshua, Jesus himself, celebrates in the book of John. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Happy holiday season from here in Jerusalem.
Yes, remember, Jesus is the light of the world, but He shines through you. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.